What's your name?
Ford.
Have you a surname?
No.
This group seems rough around the edges. But you seem clever. Hopefully we can make this work.
I think we should be able to. Yeah. I mean, I think amongst all of us, we should be fine.
Let's make it work.
We'll make it work.
Have you had these magic abilities your whole life like a kid?
No. Again, fairly recently.
Something happened?
Understand. can I confide in you for something?
Oh, yes, please.
I'm a little unnerved about this sword. Would you stand watch for a second?
It seems like a bad idea, sure. Something might have followed you.
Nothing like this. I've never seen anything like this. Before, only in that dream where Vanderbilt was holding it. He pushed it in his chest, but this is smaller. This sword just seems to take in things.
As the Sword of Fathoms, the previous chosen.
Good morning, stream. Howdy doody do this.
Something in you that you either don't want to talk about or don't remember properly, I think.
Oh, we're so close to the end. Ah. Good morning, Cameron. Good morning, Lady Temeraire. How we doing? It's a very solid silence file. Holy shit. Goob. Today, we begin with chapter 38. And then tonight in Dungeons and Dragons, Megan's character gets raised from the dead. She fucking died last game. I murdered my wife. I did unalive her, and somebody else is going to have to unalive her.
Chapter 38. No! Lauren fell to her knees beside Chet as he slumped to the ground. She seized his throat, trying hopelessly to stanch the blood as it poured out over her fingers. Her dreams played in her mind, the dreams where Chet always died, always, just as he was dying now. Jem gave a scream and launched himself at Naya, but the mystic struck him a heavy backhand blow, and he landed hard on the floor. Damaris struggled against her bonds, trying to fight to her feet. Naya kicked her back down, and she lay still. Then Naya seized Lauren by the back of her cloak and hauled her up. "Stop your fretting, Nightblade," she growled. "Look." Lauren struggled against her, fighting to reach for Chet again. She knew she could not save him, but darkness take her if she would not be with him as his life slipped away, if she would not give him at least that comfort. Then she froze. From Chet's eyes poured a glow she knew well, mage light, and as she watched, his form began to change. His skin darkened, and his sandy brown hair turned black. When the glow faded from his eyes, he was Chet no longer, but Huel. He raised a hand, reaching for her, but she could not know whether it was in anger or in fear, for the blood that bubbled up around his teeth was all she could see. Life fled him at last, and his hand fell to the stone floor. Naya let go, and Lauren jerked away from her. How did you? Sky above, girl. Naya's voice was a low growl, still holding some of the fury of her battle rage. Look at him. He wears different clothes. Chet wore boots into the stronghold, but Huel has shoes on. She spoke the truth. Huel's clothes were burned and torn, but they were clearly different. In her relief at seeing Chet again, Lauren had not seen the details of his appearance. I thought... I know what you thought, said Naya. But we are out of time. All of Yowamba will soon be mustered against us, and we must escape before that happens. But Chet, the real Chet, I mean, where is... Lauren! Chet's voice rang out from the hallway. A moment later, he appeared there in the doorway, gripping its edges with his hands. Lauren ran to him with a cry, but she stopped a pace away, hesitant. Sky above, listen, girl, said Naya. Look at his boots! Lauren did, and they were Chet's, and she ran forwards to embrace him. He started, surprised, but then his arms folded around her. What is it? He said. What is wrong? Jem and I became separated, and... He froze, and she knew that he had seen Huel's body. Lauren pushed away from him and followed his gaze. He took your likeness, and when I saw him, I thought you... And then she recalled her dreams. Chet, in the depths of Yowamba, before Damaris, his throat cut. Even Auntie's appearance, over and over again, every night. Weremage, she thought. All at once she understood, and she began to laugh. It rang.
Oh, Lauren. Oh, Lauren, no.
It rang from her clear and loud, mayhap her first true laugh since that final night with Zane upon the seat. She laughed until her knees were weak, and she had to hold Chet to remain standing. "Lauren, I do not understand what has happened," said Chet. "You will," she said, touching his cheek. "Everything, I promise you, I will tell you all, but after we have escaped." "That may be a problem," said Jem. He had thrust his head into the shaft with the wooden platform, and now he withdrew it. "The way is shut." "What do you mean?" said Lauren. She went to him and looked for herself. Far above she could see a metal grate. It had been placed to block the way up, with only a tiny gap in its middle so that the rope could run through it. "It looks to block the top 5 levels, if I guess the distance correctly," said Jem. "A measure to prevent escape by the very route we had planned to take." Lauren turned to Damaris, who sat against the wall now. Though the merchant's mouth was covered, Lauren could see the smile in her eyes. She knelt and pulled off the gag. "How can we escape?" she said. "You cannot," said Damaris. Her voice was calm, measured, and utterly in control. "You will die here, slain by my soldiers. You will die here, slain by my soldiers. Your only possible consolation will be taking my own life before that happens, and I call that a small price, for your end is assured." Lauren saw no doubt whatsoever in the woman's. Lauren saw no Lauren saw no doubt. Lauren saw no doubt whatsoever in the woman's face, and it sent a chill through her. But Naya seized the front of Damaris's dress and dragged her to her feet, slamming her back in. Slamming her back into the wall. "Do not toy with us, wretch," said Naya. "There is a way out, a way that you would use to escape if Yuwamba were besieged beyond hope of victory. Tell us where to find it." Damaris cocked her brows. "I do not know you, woman." "You will know me before the end," hissed Naya. "Tell us how to get out." "Never," said Damaris. "Not in a lifetime could you understand the depths of my loathing for this girl, with her simpering eyes and stolen cloak." "I have stolen many things, but not this," said Lauren, smiling fiercely at the merchant. "The cloak you gave me freely, and, too, you drove your daughter away from you and into my company. You may blame yourself for that as well." Damaris jerked without warning in Naya's arms, breaking free and flinging herself at Lauren. But with her hands bound behind her, it was a feeble lunge, and Lauren caught her by the shoulders. Damaris thrashed and struggled, screaming in Lauren's face. "Never speak of her to me, you mewling sow! You will beg me for death before I am through with you. I have spent a lifetime plumbing the depths of pain. I will plunge you into them again and again, until you have forgotten your own name, until you have forgotten everything but agony." Lauren pushed her slightly away. She drew back her hand and gave Damaris a calm, measured, crushing slap across the face. Crushing.
Okay, we got a pop and a tongue click. That's, that's impressive. No.
Crushing slap. Crushing slap across the face. "No, you will not." Chet put a hand on her shoulder. "We have remained here overlong," he said. "If we cannot use the shaft to escape, we should find a better place to hide." Naya seized Damaris once again and spun her around before driving a knee into her gut. The merchant gave a thin grunt, wheezing as she tried to suck air into her lungs. "Tell us," said Naya. "Tell us before I end you." Damaris only laughed. The mystic squeezed her by the throat, cutting off the laugh and pressing her windpipe until her eyes bugged out. "I give you one final chance. Speak. I have killed many here today, and I will kill more before the end. Speak, or you are next." She drew her knife and pressed the point against Damaris's jugular. "Stop it," said Lauren. She seized Naya's wrist and pulled it away. "That is not the mission." "The mission," snarled Naya. "The mission now becomes escape, and if we cannot capture Damaris, better to kill her. Our situation is not hopeless. We saw on the way in how sparsely populated this place is. We may still make our way to the top." Lauren's hand tightened on Naya's wrist. "And we may need Damaris as a bargaining chip. Without her, our chances dwindle." Rage still burned in the mystic's eyes, plain for all to see, but a spark of cunning flashed within them, and Lauren felt the tension in her arm fade away. "Very well," she said in a low voice, "because we need her." Lauren nodded. "Because we need her." We need.
Is it you? I guess so.
Because we need her. Lauren nodded and then turned to Damaris. "That is twice now when I could have killed you and did not. That is in repayment, for you have done so twice for me." "And never a greater mistake," hissed Damaris. "But you have no power over me, girl. You have only ever called off the trained dogs who march by your side, the wizard who became a dean, and now this mystic." "You are a fine one to talk," said Lauren, arching an eyebrow. "When have you ever held a blade yourself, rather than commanding the one in Gregor's hand? Gag her." She turned away as Chet did as she asked. But then a thought struck her, spurred by her own words. Gregor. "Hold a moment," she said, and turned to Damaris. "I did not see Gregor with you below. Is he here in Yawamba?" The merchant froze. Above the gag, she studied Lauren with narrow eyes. "You seem fairly obsessed with this Gregor fellow," said Naya scornfully. "Is he another lover, mayhap, whose affections you scorned?" Chet glared at that, but Lauren ignored it. "He is her god, and he is loyal to her beyond measure or reason. Her other gods obey her to the letter, for their duty is to their family. If Damaris ordered them to kill us at all costs, even if it meant her own life, they would obey." Lauren smiled at Damaris. "But not Gregor. If we offered her life in exchange for our escape, Gregor would accept in a heartbeat." Naya's hand tightened on Damaris's shoulder. "We will not surrender her." "Of course not," said Lauren, her smile broadening. "But Gregor will believe that we will. He knows I am an honorable thief." Damaris screamed into her gag and lunged for Lauren again, but Naya dragged her back. Lauren looked over to Chet and Jem, who wore hopeful smiles for the first time since they had all entered the room. "Find us some Yeren guards, my friends. It is time we got out of this place." It is time we got out of this place. Damaris struggled all the while they dragged her down the hallways. Naya held her arm across the woman's throat, placing her in front of the party as they sought for guards to bargain with. They had to find a staircase down to the next level, for the one they were on was still abandoned. Eventually, they neared the mess hall they had snuck through earlier. Around the corner from it they stopped, and Naya looked to Lauren. With a nod, Lauren ushered her around the corner. "Guards of Yeren!" she cried. The room went utterly silent, and everyone within froze. The guards had mustered in groups around the tables on either side of the room. It seemed that two captains had gathered their men around to inform them of what had happened and to issue orders. Lauren saw that many of the men had burns on their bodies or their clothing, and wondered how long they had been fighting the flames, trying to find their lady among the smoke and the blaze. Now they edged away from the tables and towards the center of the room, hands going to the hilts of their swords. "That is enough of that," said Naya, tightening her grip on Damaris's neck. "Stay your hands, or see her body broken." They froze, looking at each other uneasily. Then one of them stepped forwards, a barrel-chested fellow with a thick beard flecked with gray.
Unhand our lady, or things will not go well for you.
"We will not," said Lauren. "Not until we have seen Gregor." At that the man paused. He glanced at Damaris. From beneath her gag she shouted, and with her eyes wide she shook her head back and forth. But her words could not be understood, and the guard captain frowned.
"Run and fetch Gregor," he said to one of his men.
"Captain!" He lifted 3 fingers.
"Do as I say, and do not return without him. Am I understood?"
The guard gave Lauren and the others a worried look. "Yes, Captain." The guard ran out the room's other exit at once. The captain turned back to Lauren.
"What do you want?"
"Assurance of escape," said Lauren. "Once we are safely on our way out of Uwamba, your lady will be freed."
"I cannot allow that," he said at once.
Lauren smiled. "We will see once Gregor arrives. Where is he?"
"Not far,"
said the captain. "Good, then," said Lauren. "If it is all the same to you, we will be in the hallway with your lady to ensure that none of your men think to try their luck with an attack." The captain took a quick step forwards. Naya jerked Damaris up until the merchant was forced to stand upon her toes. The captain froze.
"Do not take her out of our sight," he said.
"Very well," said Lauren. "Very well." "Very well," said Lauren. "She and my friend will stand in the doorway where you may see her." They backed away slowly, with Lauren and Chet and Jem taking up position just to the left of the door. Naya stood in sight of the guards, holding Damaris before her. The merchant continued to struggle and fight, flinging her hands back and forth where they were bound before her. "Be still," snarled Naya. She drove a fist into Damaris's side, causing her to groan and sag. "Naya," said Lauren, "enough. If you harm her too badly, they will not help us at all." "I will do more than harm her if she does not stop her squirming," said Naya. Chet looked up and down the hallway. "What has taken the guard so long?" he said. "I thought Gregor was nearby." "If I know him, he searches high and low for Damaris," said Lauren. "He might have gone farther than the captain knew." But she understood his anxiety. She, too, felt more ill at ease the longer they remained here. "Still yourself, witch," said Naya. Her arm constricted on Damaris's throat just a bit more. "I think you squeeze her too tight," said Jem, frowning. "She is twitching." Lauren glanced over. Though they were still bound before her, Damaris's arms were indeed spasming back and forth. Or rather, her hands were, in little jerky motions. Then Lauren's eyes shot wide. The merchant was not struggling against her bonds. She was speaking to the guard captain in sign. "Naya, run!" she cried, but too late. A door down the hall burst open, and with a great shout of battle cries, soldiers in mail shirts and green cloaks stormed into view. Naya froze in shock, and Damaris jerked away from the woman's grasp, then ran stumbling into the mess hall before she could be reclaimed. Lauren ran to help, but only in time to see Damaris turn beside the captain and rip the gag away from her mouth with a triumphant grin. "Kill them!" cried Damaris. "Burn this place to the ground if..." cried Damaris. Cried Damaris. "Burn this place to the ground if you must. Bring me their corpses." With a snarl, Naya drew her sword, but Lauren seized her arm and dragged her back. "You cannot take them all," she cried. "Run!" They did. Turn. Run! She cried. "Run!" They did, turning and fleeing down the hallway as an army surged after them.
Chapter 38 done. Ugh. Oh. Whoops. Gonna go make sure my son is up. Da-da-dum. Bum, 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 bum.
Chapter 39. Chapter 39. We cannot leave without Damaris, said Naya as they ran. We cannot capture her and live, replied Lauren. If you turn back and attack her guards, they will overwhelm you. Now we can only escape and try again another day. You should have let me kill her. Lauren did not answer, but she wondered if the mystic was right. Yet Cal did not answer, but she wondered if the mystic was right. Yet Cal had been clear. Justice was worthless if delivered in secret. Should Damaris die here, in the bowels of this mountain, who would ever even know? Especially if Lauren and the rest of them did not escape to spread the tale. And if they killed her like common assassins, that would make them no better than the traitors they fought against, who had tried to murder the High King. But she had no time for such thoughts, not if she wanted to get them all out alive. They ran up the first stairway they saw, but it only took them up one floor, and they did not know which direction to turn. We do not know the way out, said Chet. We will never get out of here before they catch us. Oh, stop your whining, said Naya. There is no other choice, said Lauren. We have to keep looking and hope for the best, one floor at a time. They turned this way and that through the halls, trying to create a weaving, winding path so that they could not be followed easily. Lauren, Chet, and Jem wore only cloth, and Naya was strong enough to run fast even with her chain shirt, so that they soon left the guards behind them. But they could hear the pursuit, their shouts and footsteps thundering in the halls. At last, Lauren spotted another stairway. There, she cried, leading the way to it. But at the foot of the stairs they skidded to a halt. Ahead they heard more shouts and the sound of running. Another group of guards, and this one making its way down towards them. "We are trapped," whispered Lauren. "Then it is a fight after all," said Chet. He looked to Naya. "I suppose we should be glad we have your sword." "Wait," said Jem. He looked up at Lauren with wide eyes. "There may be a way. The shaft." She frowned at him. "It is shut, Jem. We cannot go up that way." "Not up," he said. "Down." Her mind raced. Down, down, into impenetrable darkness. But where they had heard the sound of running water, it might be a river deep enough to swim. It might be only a few fingers deep, or the rope might not be directly over the water at all, and end 10 paces above a rocky cavern floor, and they would kill themselves if they tried the jump. But they did not know that, and they did know what would happen if they stayed and fought the guards. "We must try it," she said. "Come." They ran on, and now they ducked their heads into each room as they went, searching for one that had a hatch. Chet found one in a few moments. Lauren threw it open and looked up, just to be sure, but there was the metal grate, blocking the way in this shaft just as it had in the other. "Very well," she said. "Down it is." They slipped through the hatch as quickly as they could. They slipped through the hatch as quickly as they could, with Naya going last. She pulled the hatch as far shut as she could, though she could not latch it from the inside. It would have to do. Lauren led them all down the rope. 15 floors they had descended before they found Damaris. Lauren thought they passed at least 15 more, but it was hard to keep count, for no light came through the hatches on the lower levels. Soon they were in pitch blackness, and when they looked up they could only barely glimpse the soft glow that had lit their way before. "How will we even know when we reach the bottom?" called Jem. The sound of rushing water had grown loud enough now that he had to raise his voice to be heard. "I imagine the rope will end," said Lauren. "That is not comforting," said Chet. Lauren chuckled, and then she cried out, for the wall had vanished under her feet. She had reached the bottom of the shaft, and when she put out her foot to take the next step down, it met only empty air. For a terrifying moment she swung there in the darkness, swaying back and forth on the rope as she tried to tighten her grip. "Lauren!" cried Chet, for he could not see her. "I am all right," she said. "The shaft has ended, but the rope has not." "Can you see the floor?" said Naya. "I cannot see anything at all," thought Lauren irritably. But she only said, "No." Hand over hand she lowered herself once more, but now the way was harder without something to brace herself on. Her hands began to chafe on the rope, and she did not know how much longer she could keep hold. "As long as you must," she told herself, tightening her grip again. This place must have a bottom. They would reach it eventually. And then the rope ended. Lauren felt it with her feet first, where they were wrapped around the line. Suddenly they encountered the curving loop at the bottom of the rope, where it turned and ran back up the shaft to the crank that must be at the top. She went a little farther down and stuck out her feet, but she already knew she would not find the ground. The rushing water was loud, thundering below them, but too far for her to reach. "We are at the bottom," she called up. "Thank the sky," said Jem. "I mean the bottom of the rope," said Lauren. "The floor is still far below." "Ah," said Jem. "That is somewhat less good news." "What do we do?" said Chet. "A moment," said Lauren. "I'm thinking." At least she was able to put a knee in the loop of the rope and take some of the weight off her arms, but that only made her realize that her friends had no such support, and their grips must be as tired as her own. Her mind raced, desperate for an answer. They could risk the jump, though she could not be sure. It sounded as though the water was below them. They could drop from the end of the rope and hope that they would land in the river that would carry them out into the valley. But then again, if the river indeed emerged out into the open, would they not be able to see the light of the opening from here? See. She cursed the darkness. If only she had a torch or... See. She cursed the... she cursed the darkness. If only she had a torch or moon's light or... Lauren almost struck herself, she was so angry. You stupid, stupid fool, she thought. The mage stones. She had them in her cloak, the same place she always kept them. But she had not used them since Ammon, and had nearly forgotten about them. I cannot hold on to this rope forever, you know, said Jem. The boy tried to fill his voice with bravado, but Lauren could sense the fear quivering beneath it. Even one so strong as I am has his limits. One moment, she said, fumbling with her cloak pocket. With hasty fingers she seized a mage stone and broke off a piece, which she shoved in between her lips. Then she reached for the back of her belt and drew her dagger. The cavern seemed to erupt in light, silver and pale, like the glow of the elves. Now Lauren could see as though she stood in the sun, or better, for every detail was enhanced, from the ridges in the rocky cavern to the cobwebs that collected in the corners. She looked down and was glad she had not risked the jump. There was a river, yes, mayhap 15 paces below them, but it twisted and turned through a fissure in the floor, and just beneath them was only rock, pocked with spikes of stone that jutted up from the ground towards them, like hungry teeth eager to devour. We cannot jump, said Lauren. There is only stone below us. What? Said Chet. How do you know? My eyes are adjusting, she lied. Are you not getting used to the darkness? Then what do we do? Said Naya, her irritation plain. Lauren looked about. She could see other ropes hanging down from other holes in the ceiling, other shafts leading up to other wooden platforms, and all of them too far away to reach. But then she turned the other way, and saw that they were very near to the cavern wall, and there were shelves in the rock there. But it was at least 5 paces away, too far to jump and certainly too far to reach. We must swing, said Lauren. Swing the rope this way. She reached up and tapped Jem's leg on the side where the rock wall was. He did the same to Chet, who did the same to Naya. I see nothing that way, said Naya. Trust me, said Lauren. Draw back your legs and... now! They did it, back and forth, back and forth. At first they were awkward and uncoordinated, but as they all sensed the rhythm of each other, they soon moved in unison. The rope only moved a pace at first, and then 2. Then they got within reach of the shelf, but Lauren missed her grasp. She tightened her grip on the dagger with one hand, and her hold on the rope with the other. This time, she cried, and when she swung towards the shelf, she reached it at last. She threw herself onto the stone, and a lump in the rock struck her in the ribs, making her wince. But she seized the rope and pulled it tight, and just managed to keep from sliding off the edge again by wrapping her arms around the stony bump. The rope hung there, her 3 friends upon it, dangling over the rocky floor far below. Quickly, she said through gritted teeth. Climb down. Jem descended like a spider, and she sighed with relief once his weight was off the line. Then came Chet, and by the time only Naya was left, it was easy. The mystic reached the shelf at last, and Lauren released the rope with a sigh. But above her she saw that the other 3 were fumbling blindly in the dark, their hands on the wall to hold themselves steady. We have to climb down from here, she said. The wall is rough. There are handholds aplenty. How can you see? Said Chet. It is black as tar. What matters is that I can see, said Lauren. I will go down first. When I tell you to, guide your foot to the edge, and I will give you your first handhold. They did as she bid, and one by one they slid over the edge and began to climb down the stone wall. Lauren put the dagger in her teeth, careful not to let it touch her lips, for it was frighteningly sharp. She was gratified to see that its magical properties remained even when she held it so. With its help, she took them all the entire long, dark, frightening way to the floor of the cavern, and when they had reached it, they sighed with relief. If anything, I can see less than before, said Jem. If this place is so dark, is there even a way out? The water must emerge somewhere, said Lauren. It forms the stream in the valley outside Yawamba. Chet, put your hand on my shoulder, and the rest of you in a chain. I will take us to the water, and we will follow it out. So they progressed to the water's edge. Lauren could see that the river was nowhere near so deep as she had thought. She doubted it came up to her chest. But it was wide, and the way beside it was not always clear, so that it took them some time to follow it through the cavern. When they reached the end of it, Lauren hoped to find a curve in the rock, some sort of passage that would take them to the open air beyond. But to her dismay, the water ended at a wall, against which it frothed and bubbled. "The water has ended," she said. "What do you mean it has ended?" said Naya. "It dives under the cave wall here. If it emerges into the open air beyond, it goes underground for a ways beforehand." "Then there is no way out?" said Chet. "There is," said Lauren. She turned to look at him, but then realized that was pointless, for he could not see her. "The river," Naya snorted. "Underground? We do not know how far it is. We could drown. Yet there is no other way." "Lauren, I cannot swim," said Jem, and now all his bravado had fled him. She cursed inwardly, for she had forgotten. "I can take you, Jem. You can hold my shoulders." "He had better come with me," said Naya. "You are not as strong as I am." Lauren studied the mystic for a moment, thankful now for the darkness. "I would rather bring him myself," she said carefully. "Jem and I have done something like this together before." That was true enough. In the city of Welmont, they had swum under a gate that blocked the river. But in truth, swum under a gate that blocked the river. Had swum under a gate that blocked the river.
That's weird. Ah, crap, my microphone's downstairs. And I gotta take the kids to the bus anyway. So I'm gonna run the kids to the bus. And then I shall return. In about 15 minutes, I will leave you with some music from Autumn Orange to keep you company. And when I come back, we'll pick up this line real fast, just to not have that audio glitch in there. All right, back in 15.
Magic's new to me. This sword is new to me. I didn't have most of this all of my life. All I had was my words to get out of situations, to try and heal conflict, to try and outsmart somebody. And now all of a sudden I have this power and I feel like it's a shortcut and I've been cheating myself. Leave no trace.
No, I'm taking this.
Put it back or
I'm
I'll
taking this. Isn't worth my time. I'm taking this.
down.
Ford, put that fucking thing down.
I will fucking leave both of you here. We're either a team or you're working for yourselves. Decide.
As the sleep takes you, and the darkness of your dream state alleviates you the stress of the day, your aching muscles turning numb, your physical form and consciousness now removed and aimless.
even said that you did your own dental work at one point. Did you do that on purpose?
When I was younger, they used to make fun of my teeth. And kids can be cruel, so I decided to take away the target that was most easily available for them.
Did you grow up with people who did not have tusks like you, and so you were different?
Yeah, at the time, there weren't any others like me. So, I feel like I was especially picked on for my teeth.
Do you still feel the same way about your teeth?
Not necessarily. It just kind of became a habit.
So you have to continue to do it?
I'm sure I don't have to. It's kind of like I was a bit tougher than most of the other kids. I felt like I could take the physical poking, but the jeering.
The emotional poking was too much.
This is many years later, though. You know, I can't imagine that any of us would even blink at tusks.
Do you ever want them to stay there?
I could grow back.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are times. I've seen them, other half-orcs with the teeth. I feel like it's a trait that sort of exemplifies the rougher side of my race. So sometimes I wish I had them, and sometimes I'm glad I don't.
Yeah, well, you know, for many of us, our early days are always with us.
This is how you see yourself, right?
I think it's how I like to see myself.
I mean, it's how we see you.
But I think you would look fine either way for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're too distracted with our own personal damage.
Right.
Yeah.
You saying I should let them grow out?
I'm just saying if you want to, you would look good that way as well. You look good this way, you would look good that way.
Co-signed.
All right, fair. How about you see me picking at them or chipping at them, any of that shit, and you just say the word and I'll stop. He was my mentor, a captain of mine. A man named Vandrin.
I've heard you say his name before.
Yes. I haven't seen him in quite some time. I don't know what any of this means, but I was back on shore and I didn't see anything of the ship or him or any of the other crewmates.
Maybe he's alive and you were seeing through his eyes right now.
I would like that.
Okay, we're back. Run away. Ah, my microphone. Fuck. One moment, please. Huh. That's very funny. Yeah, I suppose that is... No, that's very funny. All right. Check. Check, check. There we go. That was true enough. In the city of Wellmont, they had swum under a gate that blocked the river.
together before. That was true enough. In the city of Wellmont, they had swum under a gate that blocked the river. But in truth, Lauren was not sure that she trusted Naya with the boy's life. The mystic had always scorned him, likely thinking him too young to be on such an important quest. If the way became blocked and Naya faced the choice of saving the boy or saving her own skin, Lauren did not think it would be a difficult decision. Naya only shrugged. "If you insist." "Lauren, are you certain this is the best way?" said Chet. "Of course not," she told him, "but it is the only way. Now come, dawdling here will not make the swim easier." She shucked off her boots and tied them to her belt. They would not help with her swimming, but once they emerged out the other side, she could not go barefoot all the way back to their camp. Quickly, she helped the others do the same, for their fingers fumbled in the darkness, and soon they were ready. "All right," said Lauren. "Jem, take my shoulders. Follow the flow of the water. It comes out the other side in the end, so it knows where it is going. Good luck." "Luck," said Chet, laughing suddenly. "How can we think ours is good after all that has happened?" Naya scowled in the direction of his voice, likely thinking no one could see her in the pitch-dark cavern. Then, without warning, the mystic flung herself into the water. After letting Jem take a deep breath, Lauren followed. The water snatched her at once and dragged her into the tunnel beneath the rock. Immediately, it slammed her into the wall, and she felt Jem's grip shift. Keeping one hand on her dagger hilt, she reached up with the other and clutched his arm. It was useless to try to swim, for the current was too strong here. She only twisted and turned, keeping her body between the boy and the rocks, and used her legs to brace against the impact. Chet and Naya would not be able to see a thing, and Lauren only hoped they did not take too hard of a battering. Her lungs grew weak and then began to burn. The tunnel ahead showed no sign of ending. She took her hand from Jem's arm and tried to swim as best she could, desperate to speed their progress. If she was losing her breath, Jem must be near to drowning. Naya and Chet were nowhere to be seen. Had they become separated? Did the water run in different passages, ones she had missed as she went by? A dim light appeared, different from the night vision of the dagger, illuminating the channel. The end of the tunnel at last. But though they could see the glow, they still could not see the exit, and spots had begun to dance in Lauren's vision. Around her neck, she felt Jem's grip slacken. "No," she thought. She seized his arm and kicked as hard as she could, striking for the light ahead. Hold on, you little brat." Sunlight erupted above them, almost blinding in its intensity. Lauren shoved her dagger into its sheath and swam up, still clutching at Jem. Her head broke the surface with a great splash, and she sucked in a greedy lungful of air. The shore was only a few paces away, and she kicked for it. Naya was there already, on hands and knees in the grass, gasping and heaving. Lauren flung Jem up on the bank first, and then dragged herself from the water. Her black cloak had become dead weight, intent on trying to drag her into the river again, so she undid the clasp and threw it off. She fell on the shore as all her strength left her at once, and her chest heaved with her breathing. But then she thought of Jem and rose once more. She crawled to the boy and flipped him onto his back, pounding on his chest. For one heart-stopping instant he lay still. Then at last he coughed up water. She hauled him up to sitting and bent him forwards, and he kept coughing until no more water came out. Lauren looked up towards the stream. "Chet. Where is Chet?" Then he appeared, breaking the surface just as she had, a little upstream. He saw them and fought to swim to the shore, gasping. Lauren sighed with relief. Chet had always been a good swimmer. "Is he all right?" said Chet, once he had gained the land. "Well enough, considering," said Lauren, giving Jem's back a final pound. "Leave off," said the boy, waving a limp arm in her direction. "I am fine." Lauren smiled down at him, but the smile died on her lips as a horn cut the air. She had not had time to take in their surroundings, but now she looked up. They were at the foot of the stronghold, with its peaked prow jutting out into the air straight overhead. A few hundred paces away was the bottom of the long, winding ramp that led up to the main entrance. and down that ramp figures were running and shouting, their weapons drawn. "They have spotted us," said Lauren. She fought for her feet and snatched up her cloak. "Come, we must flee if we are to survive." Quickly she removed her boots from around her waist and pulled them on. Naya struggled to don her own boots, her movements slow and sluggish. "I would wager that now you wish we had killed the guards in..." Slow and sluggish. Sluggish. "I would wager that now you wish we had killed the guards in the valley as we approached." "I do not, but thank you," said Lauren, frowning. "Now is not the time for gloating, but for running." Run they did, following the stream. Soon the guards were behind them, giving chase along the opposite side of the river. But Lauren and her friends were waterlogged and exhausted from the swim, so that they could not gain much ground, and soon their lungs burned anew. "We are not gaining any ground," said Chet. "They will follow us straight back to Uzo and Anis." And Lauren almost stopped in her tracks, and only resumed her flight when Chet snatched her arm and pulled her along. "Shiyun! Where is Shiyun?" "She will look after herself," said Naya. "Likely she fled the fortress as soon as the alarm was raised, for who could think that we would escape?" It was not a comforting thought that Shiyun would leave them to their fate, but certainly they could not go back to sea. If they somehow evaded the guards, they would return later, but she did not see how that would happen. And then they ran over a hillock, and an arrow struck Lauren in the chest. She stumbled in her run and barely kept herself from falling on her face, sinking to her knees instead. Dazed, she stared at the feathered shaft that protruded from her torso, on the left side and just under the collarbone. Her gaze drifted upwards. 3 guards stood there. They were the ones Shiyun had shown to Lauren on the valley floor, 2 days ago when they had discovered Yawamba. Maybe they were another 3. But one of them had a bow, and she had loosed the shaft that now pierced Lauren's body. Was that the arrowhead she could feel, protruding from her back? She tried to lift her left arm to see, but it did not move. She lifted her right arm instead, reaching behind her back, but a pain shot through her, and she dropped her head. Someone was screaming. Who was screaming? She looked up. Chet. Chet, who held her shoulders, who was trying to place his body between her and the archer. "Why do that?" she thought. "I have been shot already." It struck her then that that was a foolish thought, and her mind was wandering. Someone else was there. Shiyun, her dark eyes wide and anxious as she beheld Lauren's wound. And looking over Chet's shoulder, Lauren could see 2 of the Yeren guards had now been shot as well, and lay still on the ground. Shiyun must have done it. The 3rd guard lay on his back, hands raised feebly, as Naya plunged her dagger into his chest, over and over and over. Lauren fell backwards, and knew nothing more.
Chapter 39 done. Damn. I wonder, we've only got 3 chapters left. I don't know how long the chapters are, but they don't seem like they're going to be that long. They're heavy fucking chapters, though. Yeah, just tossing it out there. Not the next chapter, but I think the one after that. like, trigger warning, like major trigger warning. It's a pretty rough chapter. Chapter 40. Blinding pain was her only companion when she awoke, but that was better than the memory of a nightmare. Lauren tried to sit up. She failed, gasped, and lay still. Her chest was wrapped with bandages that covered a great pad of cloth. She tried to probe at it with her left hand, but as soon as her arm moved, the pain redoubled. Hissing through her teeth, she waited for it to subside before using her right hand instead, though that limb was weak and shaking. Touching the pad of cloth was not too bad, but when she tried to lift it, dried blood peeled from her skin. She winced and left it alone, and then looked around. Where were the others? She knew she was in her tent, but Chet was not with her, and she heard no movement outside. "Is anyone there?" she croaked. She heard movement on the grass, and then the tent flap flew open. Chet eagerly poked his head in, eyes shining as he beheld her. "You are awake," he said, his voice shaking. "I am, and I am thirsty." "Of course," he said. "One moment." He vanished, only to return shortly with her water skin. Shortly with her water skin. She could not sit up without his help, but once she did, she drank deep, ignoring the way it burned in her throat. When she was done, she patted his arm, and he moved the skin away. "How long?" she said. "It is the evening of the day after our mission." Lauren's eyes shot wide, and she tried to look out through the tent flap. "They have not found us?" "We moved the camp," said Chet. "Shun found this place, and we were on constant watch in case they drew near it. But then, sometime during the night, they simply gave up." "Why?" said Lauren. "Why would they?" She frowned, looking into her lap. Then a guess came to her, and she surged forwards, trying to leave the tent. But with a grimace and a cry, she fell back, and Chet only just caught her in time. "Sky above, Lauren, give yourself a moment at least. You took an arrow. That is no scratch." Once more she looked at the bandages on her chest. "Who did this?" "Naya," she guessed in her mind. "Uzo," said Chet. "He has some little skill as a healer, it seems, though he told us often that he is no master at it. He did say the wound could have been much worse. The arrow struck only flesh, nothing vital." "Nowhere near as bad as your wound upon the seat, then?" said Lauren. Though he tried to restrain it, a guffaw burst out. "Darkness take you, Lauren. We are not in contest to see who can suffer the greater injury." Lauren smiled at him and put her hand on his cheek. "Did everyone get out safely?" "They did," he said. But then his face darkened, and his voice grew quiet. "All but Weath, of course." "I'm sorry," said Lauren. Then she shook her head. "Darkness take me, my thoughts are wandering. But we have little time.
I know why the Yarans stopped searching for us. They mean to leave Uwamba, said Chet. Annis guessed the same thing. She said it was a good thing Damaris did not know she was close by, or else she would never have left the stronghold. But now the family Yaran feels too exposed, for their location is known, and mayhap word has already reached them that Cal marches west towards them. Whatever the reason, they are preparing to leave. Then this is our last chance to stop Damaris, said Lauren. We must. She will ride out ahead of the rest, said Chet. Annis guessed that, too. She thinks she knows the route Damaris will take, unless there is some road west of the mountains she can escape to. But Uzo and Shiun have gone to guard the main road, and if Damaris passes that way, they will see her. If they believe they can take her guards, they will. If not, they will mark her passing so that we may follow in due time. Lauren stared at him in wonder. Annis did all this? Annis and Naya, said Chet, smiling. Naya commanded Uzo and Shiun to go. They should return in a few days, but all of the plans came from Annis. That girl has more wit than even I realized, said Lauren, shaking her head. But then something he had said caught her attention, and she frowned at him. You said Naya told Uzo and Shiun to go. She did not accompany them? She is here, said Chet. She took wounds herself, you will remember. I do, said Lauren. Only, I wish Uzo and Shiun were not alone. They will not endanger themselves, said Chet. He sat back, leaning on his hands. I, for one, am just glad we escaped in time, and that you were still alive. I am, too, said Lauren, smiling at him. Despite the pain from her wound, she felt as though a great weight had left her shoulders. Indeed, my mind is easier than it has been in some time. Even though we lost Damaris? Said Chet, his brows rising. She thought of her dream, and then of Huel's corpse. Even then, she said softly. He shook his head. Well, then my mind is eased as well. Only now I should go. Go, said Lauren. Where? To hunt, he said. Our supplies run low, and Naya fears to visit that little town nearby, in case the Yarans have placed agents there to watch for us. But I will send Annis in to sit with you, and help you if you should need anything. Lauren nodded. He kissed her forehead and left. A while later she heard footsteps again and smiled as the tent flap opened. But it was not Annis. It was Naya. Her regular clothes were gone, replaced with dark brown trousers and a cream-colored tunic, the same as Lauren's. It was the nondescript outfit most of them had worn on the journey, to avoid attracting attention. Hello, said Lauren softly. You look well enough, said Naya. I suppose I am, said Lauren. At least I am not dead, though not for lack of trying. Lauren smiled. How is your shoulder? Naya glanced at her own bandages. She wore fewer than Lauren did. It pains me less and less. I have been going for walks. They make it easier. I may do the same, said Lauren. It seemed as though Naya meant to say something else, or mayhap even to come inside the tent to continue speaking. But there came the snap of a twig, and she looked off to the side. She frowned at Lauren. You have another visitor. When you decide you are strong enough for walking, tell me. I shall bring you along. She vanished from sight, only to be replaced by Annis. The girl crawled into the tent with her and took Lauren's hand with a happy smile. It is good to see you awake. And it is good to see you at all, said Lauren. I heard that you have become quite the master strategist while I have been resting. Annis's cheeks darkened. I suppose I have been industrious in my planning. Thank you for seeing to things after I was injured, said Lauren. When I woke, I feared that we had lost everything. I should have known better. Stop it, said Annis, shaking her head. You make it sound as though I have performed great deeds. I have only looked at maps and read a few signs. Kingdoms have been conquered, or more importantly, saved, by ones who sit and stare at maps. said Lauren. Our party would neither have come so far nor come so close to achieving our aims were it not for you. I am glad you and Jem are with me. At the boy's name, Annis's smile dampened considerably, though she tried to maintain it. But Lauren saw and frowned. What is it? Nothing, said Annis. Nothing you should trouble yourself over at any rate. You should be resting. Lauren raised her hands. The left one moved far more slowly than the right. I am... Left one moved far more slowly. Far more slowly than the right. I am resting, and I cannot do anything else. Speak on. Did Jem do something wrong? Annis shook her head quickly. No, not at all. Only... Do you remember the night before you went to Yawamba, when I decided to tell him how I felt? How can I forget? Said Lauren, smirking. I have rarely seen you with your blood up to that extent. Well, I did it, said Annis miserably. And in return, he told me that he felt affection for another. Lauren cocked her head, wondering at the girl's despair. Another? Who? Then a horrid thought struck her. Oh, sky above, do not say he means me. Annis snorted, which Lauren did not think was very complimentary, and shook her head. No, it is Uzo. Lauren only stared for a moment. Then the meaning of it assembled in her mind. She closed her eyes and heaved a deep sigh. I see. That... I am sorry, Annis. Why should you be? Said Annis, shrugging. It is not your fault, nor his. And is that not the most irritating thing? If he did pine after you, I could box his ears for being a fool, when I have shown him plainly how I felt. But now... Yes, said Lauren, thinking of Zane, and then of Jordell. I learned the same thing myself, just before we left the seat. Sometimes the deepest cut comes from the one who did not intend it, and who had no other choice in the first place.
Chapter 40 done. Alright, I gotta use the restroom real quick. My wife.
Ah, who else beyond?
Hey.
Hey. Desmond was supposed to bring his check sheet.
Okay.
That was in the trunk of the car.
Great.
So he probably didn't, did he?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
You want to say that to Steve?
Oh! I was in back-to-back meetings, and Daddy didn't have a good, this is what needs to happen with the children, so Daddy didn't do it. Because he didn't know to do it.
Why are you talking to me like that?
Because you didn't know to do it. Was I really talking like that?
A little bit.
Sorry.
It's alright. I gotta go to the bathroom, and then I think I don't know.
What?
How long is this? Oh, no. I was gonna say, I'm really close to the end of Weremage, but I'm not gonna be able to finish it this morning.
I'm really close to your end.
What? Okay. I'm gonna go poop a lot.
I'm doing the whole David Blaine thing. Okay. I'm leaving. That's why I came in here. Not
Alright.
to go over anything else.
Well, I love you.
I love you too. You're the most amazing man.
Alright.
And
get out. Stop it.
I'd be with you to the end of time.
Stop it. Embarrassing me.
Yeah. You're embarrassed by our love.
No. Embarrassed by your ridiculousness.
Yeah, I am pretty ridiculous.
I'm gonna use the restroom. I'll be right back, String.
Is anybody there? Why do you toilet paper?
Blow my nose. Remember how I had like the real bad sniffles?
Chapter 41. She rested that day and went to sleep shortly after the sun went down. And went to sleep.
Oh, come on. Really?
She rested that day and went to sleep shortly after the sun went down. When she woke the next morning, her chest hardly hurt at all, at least not with any sharp pain. There was a gentle soreness that penetrated deep into her chest, and it swelled when she tried to move her arms. But Chet changed her bandages, which Uzo had shown him how to do, and she got a good look at her wound for the first time. It was much smaller than she had thought it would be, only a little larger than her fingernail, and the blood was already solid. "The guards of Yeren use narrow arrowheads," said Chet. "It lets them pierce chain and sometimes plate, but it lessens the wound, and thank the sky for that." With his help, she got dressed and left the tent. Outside, she found she could walk quite easily. She did not hurt anywhere but the shoulder, and as long as she did not move that too quickly, it was almost as though there was no injury at all. "That is good," said Chet. "Uzo told us that the injury was not very serious, and that it was only the shock of it that made you fall senseless. Even so, you seem to be healing remarkably quickly." It was true. She wondered about it, and then recalled what Zane had told her in the Academy's bell tower about the mystical properties of mage stones. Was this another of them? In any case, she was glad of it. As she sighed and stretched in the early morning light, Naya came out of her own tent. She smiled to see Lauren up and about. "Good morning, Nightblade. How is your wound?" "Better than yesterday," said Lauren. "And I suppose that is all that can be expected." "That is good to hear," said Naya. "Are you ready to try a walk? I found a path in the jungle yesterday that leads to a beautiful clearing. I think you would enjoy it." Lauren glanced at Chet, but he smiled and patted her hand. "I should go out hunting again," he said. "Go. It will be good for you." "I will not be gone long," said Lauren. Then she followed Naya, who struck out at once, heading south between the trees. Soon Lauren saw the trail that the mystic had spoken of. It was an easy enough walk, and went up and down a series of hills that ran along the base of the mountains. Once or twice it crossed the stream, the same one that ran out of the mountain and came flowing all the way south. Lauren remembered their escape from that place with a slight shiver. Naya saw it and looked her over. "Is something wrong? Does it hurt?" "No," said Lauren. "I only remembered the cavern under Yawamba." Naya nodded and then fixed Lauren with a crafty look. "And I remember you guiding us through it without pause. How did you see down there anyway? Do not tell me you have good eyes. The place was pitch black." Lauren shrugged. She had not revealed her dagger to any of the mystics, for she could not know who among them was trustworthy with its great secret. Even now she could feel it pressing against the ankle in her boot. "I cannot explain what I do not understand. I could see, and I do not know why you could not." Said Naya, frowning at her. "Very well. Keep your secrets, Nightblade."
That's a Lord of the Rings reference.
"But come along. We are near the place I wanted to show you." The ground rose up now, up to the top of a ridge that was like a first step leading up a grand staircase, all the way to the mountains high above. There on the top of the ridge was the clearing. When they reached it, Naya waved her arm expansively out towards the lands below, as though presenting a fine feast. It took Lauren's breath away. They were not so very high, but the land before them fell down and down, so that she could see for what seemed like endless leagues. Jungles seemed like endless leagues. Endless leagues. Jungle stretched without breaking, except to the southeast, where she could see the village of Sarafu, smoke rising from its chimneys. But the rest was a verdant rug that went on forever, and the sun a golden coin glinting in a sky like the ocean. "It is wonderful, Naya," said Lauren. "I am glad you brought me here." "Come, sit with me," said Naya. "Do you need help?" Lauren dropped and crossed her legs upon the ground. "Do you need help?" Do you need help? Lauren. Do you need help? Lauren dropped and crossed her legs upon the ground. "No, thank you." Dropped and crossed her legs upon the ground. "No, thank you. It is as I said. The wound hardly troubles me if I do not jostle it." "That is good," said Naya. She flashed a smile. "I will try not to jostle it, then." Lauren returned the smile, but she did not feel the same thrill course through her that she had during all the long journey across Veldemar. The memory of Naya's battle rage, of the way she had cut down those people inside Yawamba, would not quit her mind. "You will not have an opportunity to." "Oh, come now," said Naya. "At least be coy when you rebuff me. After what we went through in Yawamba together, I deserve at least that much." "It is Yawamba that is the problem," said Lauren. You went half mad in there. You did not only attack guards, but unarmed merchants. It was as though no amount of blood could sate you. Naya frowned. We needed to escape, and we were bringing a prisoner with us. Any pursuer could have overtaken us easily. They were a threat, and I removed them. I understand that, said Lauren, and inside she thought, do I honestly? Am I that different from the girl who left the Birchwood so long ago? But the answer was the feeling of unease in her heart. Yet I saw you, Naya. You enjoyed it. The mystic's nostrils flared, and she looked away. Mayhap I did, but not in the way you think. I have always been angry. You must have seen that yourself. Long ago I learned to control that when I fought, to harness it into a sort of madness. It makes me strong. In the moment, I may be a killer. She put a hand on Lauren's knee. But that does not mean I am always a killer. I can be gentle as well. Lauren wanted to pull her knee away, but she restrained herself. Once I wanted that, but I have told you that I am Chet's and he is mine. More clearly than ever now, I know why. Chet and I have been by each other's side for most of our lives. We know each other. We understand each other. He feels the same way about killing as I do. You are a fine woman, Naya, but you and I will never have what I have with Chet. How many times must I tell you that I do not want what you and Chet have? Growled Naya. She leaned forwards, trying to kiss Lauren. Stop, said Lauren. She shot to her feet, awkward without the use of her left arm, and her right fist clenched. I have spoken plainly, and already you have skirted dangerously close to the wrong side of the law. Leave me be. Slowly, Naya rose to her feet. She looked down at Lauren with a wry smile and shook her head. Oh, little Lauren, she said quietly, what a foolish, foolish little girl you have been. Lauren recoiled, and then her heart stopped. From Naya's eyes, a pale white light shone forth. Her form shifted and rippled. First, she shrank so that she was of a height with Lauren. Her dark hair grew by a few fingers and then turned so blonde that it was almost white. Her brown skin darkened further. Her lips grew fuller. And as the light faded from her eyes at last, they were a light hazel. A hazel that captivated Lauren just as surely as it had the first time she saw it. Her lips curled in a devilish grin. Hello, Lauren, said Auntie. I can only imagine how much you have missed me.
Oh, that Weremage. Chapter 41 done. Chapter 41 done. 41 done. 41 done. Done. That was chapter 41 done. Oof. Quick bathroom. Okay. So, if you're watching, whether you're watching right now live, or you're watching the VOD sometime in the future, this is the chapter. The infamous chapter. Heavy content warning for sexual assault. It is not an easy read or an easy listen, and if you're watching, I don't want you to be taken by surprise.
Chapter 42. Lauren turned and fled for her life. Her feet pounded down the path back towards camp, jostling her shoulder and making her wince as she plunged into the trees. She feared to look behind her, to slow even that much. "Oh, Lauren," called Auntie. "Why have you always been so coy?" The voice sounded close, forcing Lauren to turn against her will, but the Weremage had vanished. Lauren whirled, seeking her in the jungle, but saw nothing. "Why? How long?" she called out. If she could get Auntie to talk, she might be able to tell the woman's location. "When did you take Naya's place?" "You stupid, stupid girl." The voice came floating from her left, and Lauren turned. Still she saw nothing. "It has always been me. From the very first time when you made your moon eyes at me upon the seat." "That is a lie," said Lauren at once. "You were kind. You acted as though you—" "As though I wanted you?" Auntie laughed, long and cruel. "As I said, a stupid girl. So stupid you very nearly betrayed the love of your life for a pair of strong arms." She was trying to circle around, to come between Lauren and the path back to camp. "Chet!" screamed Lauren, breaking into a sprint and ignoring the pain in her chest. "Chet!" The jungle was silent. For a moment she wondered if Auntie was still there, stalking her, or if the Weremage had decided not to chase her, and instead to go back for the camp. She must reach it first. If Auntie hurt any of the others... Auntie pounced from the trees, right in front of Lauren, who tried to skid to a halt. But the Weremage's hand darted out and seized her shoulder. Lauren cried out with pain and fell to her knees. Auntie sneered down at her. "The mighty Nightblade," she said. "How long I have waited to bring you low. But I could not have imagined how sweet it would be. Almost as sweet as the taste of you upon my lips." "Why?" gasped Lauren, as Auntie continued to squeeze her wound through the bandage. "Why all of this?" "Oh, it was so very hard not to kill you until now," said Auntie. Without removing her grip, she knelt, her face only a handbreadth from Lauren's. "Even the delightful charms of your eyes, darkness take them, did not still my wrath, my desire to taste your blood upon my knife. But I knew I must be patient. I knew I must wait. For I knew in the end you would bring me to Damaris." Her free hand pulled down her high collar. Then Lauren saw that she still had a ruined throat, the mass of scar tissue that spoke of a grievous wound. It had not changed with the rest of Auntie's body. "She gave me this. She gave me this because of you. I lay in that sewer for days as I tried to stitch my own neck together, and still it is ruined because of you." Her voice was little more than rasping breath now, sweet and pungent in Lauren's nostrils. "That is why I needed you both, you see. But while I waited, while I followed you as you bumbled your way across Feldamar in search of her, I decided that you would be mine before the end." Lauren struck all at once, hoping to surprise her. Her right fist slammed into Auntie's neck, and the Weremage coughed violently. Neck, and into Auntie's slammed. Slammed into Auntie's neck, and the Weremage coughed violently just before Lauren crushed the woman's nose with her forehead. She fought to gain her feet, but Auntie recovered, sweeping her legs out from under her with a vicious kick. Lauren crashed down upon her back, screaming as agony lanced her shoulder. Auntie straddled her, drawing something from her pocket. She threw it in Lauren's face, a fine powder, burnt orange. Lauren gasped without thinking and felt it enter her lungs. Her body seized up, arms twitching, and then they ceased to move at all. She lay utterly limp, her limbs refusing to answer the call of her mind. Auntie grinned down at her. "A poison," said Auntie. "It may kill you in time if I use enough of it. For I will use a very great deal, Lauren, a very great deal. But mostly I will use it to hold you in place. Because I do not wish for you to go anywhere, Nightblade. Not while I carve you up, a piece at a time." She drew a knife from her boot and held it up. Lauren tried to recoil, but she could not move. It was the knife from her dream. Old, rusted, dirty. Far below the quality one would expect of a merchant, but just right for a madwoman who lurked in the sewers of Cabras. Lauren could not even scream. Only her eyes obeyed her, and even that was sluggish. "I want you awake for all of it. I want you to feel every bit of it, every cut. And I want you to remember all the while, Lauren." She leaned down, her lips brushing against Lauren's ear. "I want you to remember that you almost chose me, that you almost gave yourself to me in every way. Almost gave yourself. Almost gave yourself to me in every way, instead of the boy you claimed to love." "Lauren!" Auntie whirled. The voice was Chet's, but it came from a distance, somewhere off through the trees. He called out again. He was closer now. He was coming this way. "No, sky above, no," thought Lauren. "Run, Chet, please." "No, sky." No, sky above, no," thought Lauren. "Run, Chet, please. Darkness, take me. Run. Why did I call out for you? Darkness, take me. Darkness, take me. Run. Why did I call out for you?" Atop her, Auntie gave a growl, but then she froze. She turned and looked down at Lauren, an evil glint in her eye. "You told me that Chet knows you, that he understands you. You are wrong. Let me show you." Light flowed from her eyes once more, and her body began to shift. Her blonde hair turned black and grew out, and brown skin turned to cream. The transformation ended, and panic seized Lauren's breath, for she stared into her own eyes. Auntie had taken on Lauren's likeness. Indeed, she looked identical, for they wore the same dark brown trousers, the same white shirt, though Auntie's was somewhat too large, for it had been sewn for Naya's larger frame. "Come along, girl," said Auntie, and Lauren shuddered inwardly to hear her own voice from that mouth. "I mean to give you quite a show." The Weremage rose and threw her arms beneath Lauren's, dragging her off to the side of the path. She rolled Lauren beneath some bushes there and ripped some branches from the trees, throwing them over her body. but then she knelt and moved the branches slightly so that Lauren could look out. "You can see me, can you not, girl?" whispered Auntie. "I would not want you to miss a thing." Then she rose and turned, just as Lauren heard Chet approach from down the path. "Lauren!" he exclaimed. "There you are. I heard you call my name, and I feared something was wrong." "Sky above? No," thought Lauren. She railed at her body, screaming for her arms to move, but they would not comply. "Wrong? What could be wrong?" said Auntie. She waited for Chet to come to her so that she could be sure Lauren would see them. Chet stepped up to her, and Auntie slid her arms up to lace her fingers behind his neck. She drew him close and gave him a long, passionate kiss. Lauren wanted to close her eyes, but even that was beyond her power. They were dry and aching. "Nothing can be wrong when you are with me." "I am flattered, though that has not proven to be the case in recent days," said Chet, giving her a wry smile. "Chet, look to the left," thought Lauren. "Please, please, look to the left. See me." His head jerked up, and a mad hope filled her that somehow he had heard her. But he looked the other direction. "Where is Naya?" "After she showed me the clearing above, she went off on her own. She said she would make for the camp in a while. I am surprised you did not see her, but glad as well, for it means I have you alone." Slowly her hands slid down his chest and then around his waist. He responded by wrapping his arms around her and leaning in for another kiss. "And while we are here and alone..." Her hands slid around to his front, toying with the buckle of his belt. Chet drew back, laughing with embarrassment. Lauren, what are you doing? We are in the open jungle." "And why should that matter? No one is near to see us." Auntie smiled up at him and cocked an eyebrow. Her lips had a wry twist, and her eyes shone with promise. "That is not my smile, Chet," screamed Lauren in her mind. "You know it. You know my eyes. Look at them." But he only glanced back over his shoulder, a silly grin stealing across his face. "What if Naya should return and look for you?" "She will not," said Auntie. "I told you she makes for camp." When he still seemed hesitant, she kissed him again and finished removing his belt while their lips were still locked. They fell to the floor of the path, tearing at each other's clothes. Soon Auntie rolled Chet onto his back and sat atop him. Their low, hushed moans mingled with the sounds of the jungle, while Lauren could do nothing but watch. And then she blinked. At first she did not notice, but then it happened again. She tried once more, consciously, and her eyelids responded. Lauren tried to move her hand. Her fingers twitched. Could the poison be wearing off already? Auntie had made it sound as though she would be frozen for hours. Surely the Weremage would not have left her here if the paralysis would wear off so soon. Then she heard Zane's words again. "The remedies of the apothecary have little effect upon a wizard who eats mage-stones, and the same is true for poisons." The mage-stone she had eaten in Yawamba. It was still within her, burning the poison out of her blood. She tried again, and this time her hand moved, jerking from her stomach and landing on the dirt beside her. She heaved again, and it edged towards the path a little more. Chet and Auntie were growing more passionate with every moment, and the Weremage sounded nearly frenzied at their tryst. She looked down at Chet, smiling fiendishly at him. "Do you love me, Chet?" "Of course," he said, breathless. "Do you know me?" What?" Distracted for a moment, he frowned up at her. Slowly, painfully, Lauren dragged her feet up towards her body, her knee bending up into the air. Her body jerked towards the path as she let the knee fall, but though the branches that covered her rustled, it was not loud enough to hear. Without warning, Auntie slapped Chet's face. "Do you know me better than any other?" "Lauren, what in the darkness below? Tell me!" cried Auntie. Neither of them had bothered to remove their tunics, and she seized the front of his now. "Tell me you know me better than any other in all the 9 kingdoms." Chet shook his head and tried to push up on his elbows. Enough, Lauren. I do not know what you... Auntie slammed him back down on the ground. In an instant, her old rusted knife was in her hand. She pressed it against his throat. No, thought Lauren. She saw Damaris holding the knife in her dream, saw it part Chet's skin, saw his blood splashing upon the ground. Chet, she croaked. She lifted one hand, shaking as it rose into the air, helpless. Chet! But he could not hear her. Tell me, rasped Auntie. Chet went white with fear. Lauren, what are you... Lauren heaved herself out of the bushes, crashing down on the grass of the path. The sound drew Chet's attention at last, and he looked over at her. His face became a mask of confusion, and then terror as he looked up at Auntie. Chet, gasped Lauren. Run! Auntie smiled at her, a vicious grin, and her eyes began to glow. She transformed back into herself again, keeping the knife pressed to Chet's throat. Chet recoiled with a cry, but he could not move from under her with the blade pressing against his skin. Well met, lover, said Auntie. Are you not enjoying yourself? Am I not twice the bedfellow Lauren is? She is little more than a girl, after all. Chet panicked and tried to snatch her hand away, but Auntie seized his wrist and slammed it back into the ground. She did not move the blade from his neck, nor did she stop her writhing on top of him. Oh, but you are no longer so excited, said Auntie, pouting down at where they were joined. With a flash of mage light, she turned into Naya. Do you prefer another? I noticed you eyeing me from time to time as we rode together. Or was that only jealousy? No, you desired someone else, did you not? Another flash of mage light, and now she was Weeth. Yes, little Weeth, your friend, the one whose fragile little neck broke so easily just before I pitched her from the walls of Yawamba. Stop, groaned Chet, turning his head as though he could sink into the ground away from her. Please, stop it. Lauren tried to rise, tried to crawl towards them, but her legs were still sluggish. Only her arms would obey her commands. Then she remembered her dagger. It was still in her boot. Shaking, she reached for it. Do not tell me you did not want her. You have a greedy mind, little boy. Auntie's cruel smile dissolved into a grimace of hate. And I will make you pay for your every untoward thought. The dagger slid easily from its sheath. Lauren hefted it, feeling the weight. The handle is the heavier end, she thought, turning it to hold it by the blade. Sky above, do not let me miss. She threw the dagger. It sank into Auntie's arm. The weremage screamed in pain and reared back, and her blade came away from Chet's throat. He rose up and snatched her wrist, and then struck her in the face before wrestling her to the ground. With his weight he pinned her, driving a knee into her chest and holding both her hands above her head. She screamed again, but it turned into a harsh laugh. He shook as he held her down, his hands grasping at her throat. Auntie glared hatred at Lauren. You promised, you snip. Auntie glared hatred at Lauren. He glared hatred at Lauren. You promised, you sniveling little liar. You promised you would not throw the knife at me. Be silent, screamed Chet. Be silent, you vile... You... He shoved her hands away as she tried to fight him off, pressing her face into the dirt. Oh, is this all you wanted? Sneered Auntie. To be in control? You should have said so. Have me then, if you wish.
Hey, Ari. This is a good section of the stream to tune out of and not pay attention to. This is major trigger warning for this chapter. It's almost over.
You took me without... Chet's eyes were wild, his lips drawn back in a snarl. He seized the hilt of Lauren's dagger and twisted it in Auntie's arm, drawing a fresh scream from her. I will kill you. I believe you, said Auntie. What are you waiting for? Chet, groaned Lauren. Chet, Wait. His gaze turned to her. Wait? You tell me to wait? You saw what she did, Lauren. It is what the High King's harshest law commands. Lauren tried to rise to hands and knees, but her legs would still not obey her. You are not a killer, Chet, she said. The words came thick and slow upon her tongue, for the poison had not entirely left her. Remember what happened on the shores of Dorsey. Balzane, how dare you? Cried Chet, his voice rising to a great shout. There was a prisoner. He surrendered. How dare you call this the same? Incredibly, Auntie giggled. The law is clear, and I have violated it so very badly. Be silent, growled Chet. Let the mystics do it, said Lauren. They serve the king's law. Chet looked at her for a moment. She thought she saw the fury fading from his eyes. But at last he shook his head, and she saw that the anger was not gone. It had only turned to ice, a terrible, bloodless rage. We are the king's law, he said. This is not revenge, Lauren. It is justice. He was right. Of course he was right. Every child in Underrealm knew this edict. Lauren would not have blinked at Auntie's sentence, not if anyone else were to carry it out. But to see Chet with the blade in his hand, death in his eyes. Very well, she said softly. Lauren turned her gaze from him to look at Auntie instead. The Weremage looked back, her eyes twitching, her teeth showing in a smile, as though she had never been happier. She was still smiling when Chet lowered the dagger and slit her throat, sending her blood gushing across the ground. A burbling laugh poured up through her lips, along with blood. Then, even as Lauren watched, where he had slit it, the flesh of her neck began to knit back together. But not the mass of scar tissue. That remained as it had been, even when Auntie was Naya. The fresh cut, though, it healed as she watched. It healed. It healed until Chet plunged the dagger through her eye into her brain. Auntie's body spasmed once, and then lay still. And then, after a moment, a final glow came from the Weremage's remaining eye. Slowly she transformed one last time. Weath's face shifted and melted away. But she did not become the seductive, loam-skinned beauty Lauren had first met. Instead, her skin turned lily white, her face a little older, mayhap the age of Lauren's mother. The hair that replaced her white blonde was frizzy and black. A woman Lauren had never seen before lay there dead. Chet rolled away from her, covering his face to hide the tears that spilled forth. The hair that replaced her white blonde was frizzy and black. Her face a little older, mayhap the age of Lauren's mother. Mayhap the age of Lauren's mother. The hair that did not become the seductive, loam-skinned beauty Lauren had first met. Instead, her skin turned lily white, her face a little older, mayhap the age of Lauren's mother. The hair that replaced Weath's copper was not white blonde, but frizzy and black. A woman Lauren had never seen before lay there dead. Chet rolled away from her, covering his face to hide the tears that spilled forth.
Oof. Okay. Glad to be done with that, not gonna lie. Definitely had a certain feeling every time I've walked away from this scene. When I wrote it, when I recorded it, and now. So. Oh. Okay, exported, audio issues fixed. We got one chapter left, and then all of the back matter. Hey, Vale, how you doing? We are just about to wrap up here as soon as this damn file starts uploading. Come on now. I believe in you. You can do it. Okay. And we're done. Always a rough chapter. God, we've got less than an hour left. Part of me just wants to tell work that I'm going to be in late today, but that would not be the responsible thing. I mean, I'm already going to be a little bit late, but that's fine, because I've been putting in some crazy-ass overtime recently, I tell you what. Last day in the hotel. So you've got a hot evening ahead of you back at home. Tomorrow is supposed to be a blizzard. It's been too hot and then it's going to blizzard. Yeah, that tracks. Like the title suggests, this book is big on verbs. Thinking of characters as... Oh, hotel breakfast, reading time, to verbalize. Interesting. Writers can be very obsessed with verbs. It's very funny to me. Like the whole thing of like, never use an adverb, just pick the right verb. And it's like, okay. But what if an adverb sounds exactly the way that I want it to? What if I read lots of books with adverbs and they're good, actually? Like... But I understand that it is possible to over-adverb, and that they're recommending against that. All right, let's find who we're rating. Who are we rating today? Let us raid Wordwin. We will send some friends to Wordwin. Huzzah. Wordwin is usually writing or doing some kind of cool, chill, hangout sort of game, which looks like what they're doing right now. So I will throw you over to Wordwin in a moment. Yeah. Thanks for coming and hanging out, y'all. Sorry for, you know, the intensity of the last chapter. But all in service of the story, right? Right. We'll go with that. Peace out, everybody. We're going to finish this book tomorrow morning. Oh, no, shit. Tomorrow's Friday. Marketing tomorrow. Fuck. Maybe I'll finish the book first, and then I'll write the email and do a YouTube video. I'm doing a YouTube video tomorrow for the first time in fucking forever. So, that's all very exciting. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. See you next time. Bye.
VlogaNovel will take us to the party.